Well, look, I might just open with a word of prayer. Adonai, we thank you for this technology that allows us, as Shmuel said, to connect across the miles. And I pray what we hear tonight, Lord, it will just help us to be more accurate, more targeted in our prayers for your beloved Israel and our beloved Israel. And Lord, just in the support we can be to all those who live in the land, Father. We thank you for them. Thank you for Shmuel and for this opportunity for him to come out to Australia next week, Lord, to tell us more. God. And just bless dear Sandra, wherever she is, Lord. Pray that you'll keep her safe and bring her back to her family in your time, for we ask this. Thank you, Father. Bless you.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, I'll hand over to you now, Shmuel, not take up any more of our precious time.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And as I said, I hope that you're going to be our ambassadors to bring more people to the events. It's going to be a shame if I'm going to see the same faces on the screen in Australia. I'm traveling a lot here, and I really hope that God is going to provide us with blessings and people are going to come, and I'm going to be able to share our story with the help of God. The last thing I need to schedule, Joy, is where I catch my kangaroo to bring back home. So from all those places, I need to know the place that's where I need to do the work. And my friends, I don't know if it's the same notion Sandra has every time she gives this update, but I feel that this update, an hour wouldn't be enough. Like the amount of subjects that really can preoccupy an hour are enormous. And unfortunately, I must say that it's a bit of a sad time in Israel right now. I mean, you really can feel this on the streets. Combine it with the fact this is winter. It's actually a pretty cold winter. There's something very gray in the views on the streets, and people are feeling a lot of stress. And it comes from two main reasons that are basically, they are not connected, but I want to try to say that they are connected. The first reason is the obvious reason that people hear about, is the terror attacks. In the last 2 weeks, we have 9 casualties. And I think yesterday there was another soldier that was killed in Shuafat.
Yes.
It's been a very stressful 2 weeks, and the attempts are endless. Every day, you're hearing 1 or 2 or 3 different attempts of attacks, a lot around Jerusalem, but not only Jerusalem. And it was devastating. I can tell you that 2 weeks ago, I've spent the Sabbath on Tiberias, and to open the news on Saturday night, that's the way, because we keep the Sabbath. We don't get any information, any news during it. To open it on Saturday night and to see the faces already of the casualties, 7 people that were murdered in Neve Yaakov, northern Jerusalem, in a vicious terror attack. It was a vacation, everything was very uplifted, great weather. And then you open the news and you're like, it's back again. I cannot express how many times personally I felt the news on the Saturday night. After 24 hours, 25 hours of complete silence, you open the news and then you get boom to your face. It happened with the Fogel family. It happened many times. And this time, all the photos and memories came back again. Living memories of all the terror attack. And that was an awful situation. And just 2 weeks later, Friday, a couple of minutes before the Sabbath, when you're busy with cleaning and cooking and you don't have time to get the news, but just a couple of minutes before you shower to enter the Sabbath, you go in and you hear about this devastating terror attack. 2 young brothers. I'm not even capable to speak about the feeling we had to see these 2 casualties. I'm saying this and I have tears in my eyes. It's insane. A family drives or waits on the bus stop to get a bus for the Sabbath, and a terrorist just drive them over. The father is still in a pretty serious condition in the hospital, and we need to pray for him. And also, we need to be said that 2 weeks ago, on that Friday night attack, there was another attack during the day in the city of David. In the city of David, they were shooting. They shot a family that was walking, and the soldier there who attacked back or defend himself, he's still in a very high risk. So we also need to pray for him. And I want to take a minute here and just point out the obvious, which is not obvious, but this is something that we've just been learning in the last couple of days. Yesterday, with the attack, we received the news that 3 out of the 4 terrorists were teenagers. There was a kid 13 years old who shot the soldier in the city of David. Yesterday, he was 14 in Shuafat. And yesterday also, there was an attempt of stabbing a kid who is also 14. What do you put on somebody's mind, a teenager's mind, when the future is everything is upon him? It's like everything can happen in his life, that he goes and he does such a thing, like a death wish, to go and kill with the ability to be killed on the process. Think of how much education counts here. Think how much brainwashed those kids are. And I just saw an article a couple of hours ago that there's we always said that, you've been to these Zooms and you know what we're talking about, the brainwash and the education the Palestinian gets. But now the world understands there's something really bad happening here. And although it wasn't always there, now there's going to be another, I don't think it's going to work, but there's going to be another group of researchers from the UN to understand how could it be it happens on Eastern Jerusalem. Because Eastern Jerusalem, I want to remind you, these are people that live with close by with Jewish people. They work all over Jerusalem. They have blue ID cards, meaning citizenship in Israel. How come those people specifically in such an early stage in their life, when they're 13 and 14, are trying to end their life with terror? This time it worked well for them. Unfortunately, we have a lot of casualties. So that's the number one thing that we need to start with, and send prayers for all the injured people and send condolences to the families that lost their loved ones. I really recommend, if you can write on YouTube, if you can hear the mother of the 2 kids who died in Jerusalem, the Peli family, the mother speaking. I've never heard such a thing. You see somebody with a devotion and a belief saying to the camera, we got a present for 6, 7, 10, 9, 11 years. We got a present and we return the present and we say thank you for that. A core belief that you cannot imagine. I don't want people to talk this way. I want that no kid needs to die, and I don't want to have any casualties. But at least we know we have people that can deal with this and understand what we're dealing with. So if it's not enough to bring you the blues, and I'm sorry that I started with this, it's not positive at all. There's another component that makes life very stressful, lady, in Israel, and that's actually not in Judea and Samaria. It's mainly in Jerusalem, in Haifa, in Ra'anana, in Netanya, and in Tel Aviv. And of course, you saw it on the news and you saw the demonstrations. 10 of thousands of people are going and starting the demonstration every Saturday night. And they're going to the city centers, whatever city they are, and they demonstrate. Did you see that on the news? Did you see the demonstrations?
Yes.
You saw many people standing with Israeli flags and walking on the streets. And that's a very big and strong movement that we see right now. And if you ask yourself, what's the question? What's the story there? I'll try to explain as much as I can. I'll start with this. This is fake news. All the people that go there, and I have many friends who go there, are being orchestrated by, the way I see it, by a media and by people with power that play with the people without really explaining them the roots of the attempt. And I'll try to tell you in a couple of minutes. It is a sophisticated subject, but I think you will get it. And the story is as follows. And I'm sure Sandra spoke about it during the years, but now it's here. So we need to remind ourselves. The story is very simple. The story is that the state of Israel has a Supreme Court that during the year and the development of the Supreme Court, they were able to gain power that is endless. And I'm talking about the fact that today, bottom line, the Supreme Court can take any law, any decision that the government takes, that the parliament takes, the prime minister takes, and say, this is not legal in our eyes, and erase it. Now, the question with that is that the state of Israel, it's important to note, doesn't have a constitution. When you don't have a constitution, you give a lot of ability to the judge on the ground to decide with their own instincts, with his own mind, with his own, based on his willing, you will say, of course, his decision-making, his knowledge and everything. But what happened through the years is that we saw that the Supreme Court took advantage and basically began a process of running the system in Israel. It means that even if the right is being elected to the government, and even if Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be the prime minister, and even when you have 73 people in the coalition, when we're going to have a decision, when we are going to set a law, there will be attempts and there will be options to cancel them and say, this is illegal in the perspective of the Supreme Court. And what happened through the years is that the right part of Israel felt that we are being taken hostage to the fact that the left, or I would say the more liberal side of the map, is already gained its power in the Supreme Court. So when you are there and when you are able to bring more people that are like-minded, liberal, etc., you are setting a tone in the Supreme Court that today, before there's going to be a conversation, we already understand what will be the decision. It is based on the agenda of the elite that take the seats on the Supreme Court. Now, of course, you might think it's like this anywhere. Anywhere you go in the world, you have a Supreme Court who's there to balance, for checks and balances, to see that the government is not doing something illegal, that we can control its power, that we can maneuver when it's need to be done. But I feel that what happened in Israel in the last years was more than the average of what happens. And today we have an elite squad of like-minded people that are sitting in the Supreme Court, not allowing any person who comes from a different perspective or a different upgrowing to join. It became like a country club for the same family, the same species, the same type of person, the same kind of education. So what happened is this: after 4 elections, and you remember we talked about the elections in Israel, there's a new government. And for the first time in many, many years, this government understands we need to rule, we need to change things, we need to modify things. And the minister of how you call it, of justice, was able to bring a new reform into the situation and trying to balance what happened until this day in the Supreme Court. His name is Minister Yariv Levin, if you heard the name on the news, and he is the pinnacle point of the story. And he, with all the different agendas, he says 4 or 5 important things to be changed. So we are going to have a more balanced Supreme Court. He says, number 1, I understand that the Supreme Court in certain positions can overturn a law. He can say, the Supreme Court say, this is an illegal law that the parliament decreed, and we want to change it. We understand that. But sometimes in a democracy, when the people want something to happen, we need to give the power to the people. The whole idea of a democracy is to give the power to the people. And if we have a situation that your vote on the day of election goes, you have a government, and yet your decisions won't happen because the Supreme Court is going to cancel all of them, then what's the point in democracy, right? So the first law that Yariv Levin is trying to upgrade is the fact that when the Supreme Court is going to cancel a law, we can bring a special number, 60, 70, 80 people of the parliament that represents the vast majority, and to bring it back to say, no, this is a law that's more important than a regular law. And we decide, it's called Piskata Idgabrut. It means we have certain rules and laws that are more important than what the Supreme Court says. And if we brought 80 people with us to vote, you understand why it's very important. I'll give you an example what we're talking about. If you remember in disengagement from Gush Katif in Gaza, Ariel Sharon, our prime minister, wanted to pass this law. And he went and he made a vote, and he lost the vote. He lost the vote. People were against disengaging from Gush Katif. He went to court and said, this was an important vote, but it's not the vote that I care about. And I want to decide the opposite direction and still disengage. And the Supreme Court said, you are okay. In this case, Yariv Levin says, we need to have 2 abilities to say, no, this rule, this law is more important, and we have a vast majority of people that are in favor or against it, and it's going to be stronger than a regular vote. Number 2, every minister, every office in Israel has a legal consultant. You know what's a legal consultant? If you had a company, if you worked anywhere, you always have legal consultant. A legal consultant, the word consult comes from consulting. I can ask him, what do you think? Is it legal? Is it not legal? What's your thoughts about it? According to the law in Israel now, the legal consultant is stronger than the minister, is stronger than the prime minister. If he says it's illegal, or you can't do it, or you can do it, everything is going to be in line with his thoughts. So Yariv Levin says, rule number 2, let's put legal consulting in the right spot. We can consult with them, but the end decision needs to come from the person that was voted into the office and not worked his way in the office. And that's the important point. And I want to emphasize this. The biggest problem we have here is because we are talking about somebody that was voted into office to be the minister, to be the person with power and to get the seat. And there's another person that just sat in an office, worked well, and he was promoted by his boss. Who is stronger? A person that sits there as a work, or a person that was voted in? That's the very crucial point to understand. So why do we have demonstrations right now? What happened? What is the left saying? Of course, the left is saying this is the end of democracy. If you want to say that the government has more power than the Supreme Court, you are killing the democracy. And that's the question. What do you think? Do you think that a person that it was voted in a democracy is the person that needs to have the power and making decisions on the country? Or should it be somebody that went to school, was a good student, worked his way in the legal forces until he came to the Supreme Court? And bottom line, you give him more power than you give the 120 people that sat and got voted by the people. And to summarize this, I would say something very simple. We understand that a lot of the people that sit in the parliament, I'm sorry for the insult, they are not the sharpest pen in the box. They are not so brilliant, right? They're not they're not brilliant. I agree with that. But that's exactly the point of democracy. If you're able to bring 40, 50, 60,000 people to vote for you, to give you the power, you should have the power more than somebody just got into the office for no reason because he knows somebody, his uncle knows somebody, and his friend from school. And that's the point. We want to give the power to 120 people and not 10 people. On a personal note, I feel as I started, this is fake news, and I'll explain why. The way I see it, what happened this time, the left lost the election, but they lost big time. It wasn't something, almost half and half. It wasn't a draw. It was a complete loss of the left wing in Israel. And they see that, and they see how the power is not in their hand, and they just lost it. Now, in the name of democracy and fighting for democracy, they go to the street, they demonstrate, they protest. Now, I don't care about protesting. It's fine. I am in favor. This is another part of democracy. You need to demonstrate. But unfortunately, and I'm going back to the beginning of the talk, the bad vibes on the streets of Israel is because a lot of those demonstrators went above and beyond something that makes sense to say. And I'll give some examples. One, left-wing people talk about leaving Israel. If this is going to happen, this reform, Israel is not going to be a place for me. Number one. Number two, business owners say, if that's going to be the reform, I'm going to move my investments and my money from Israel. But the worst thing that happens, and it happens a lot, and unfortunately it happens from people, official people. Yesterday, Ehud Olmert, former Prime Minister of Israel, says, demonstrations are good, but it's only going to end in a real war. Only if we're going to go on a real war, meaning civil war, with the right side, then it's going to end. Ron Huldai, mayor of Tel Aviv, says, if that's the case, and that's where the country is going to go, I'm willing to go on the streets with weapon and shoot whoever is finding my democracy. These sayings, for me, are a red line. You don't cross this line when you're talking about us living together in Israel. And that's an important thing to say because, and I think it's clear to say, it's a very sad situation that people already talk about it because we've been in that situation 17 years ago. In Gush Kativ, we felt the same. We were thrown away from our homes. We were taken away from everything we voted for. We were taken custody by the government of Israel. We were thrown away from our home, and nobody ever said something like, we're going to go on a war, we're going to leave the country, we're going to fight you. This is the understanding we live in a democracy. And more than that, the understanding we are living in the brotherhood of brothers and sisters together in our nation, in our country. It is difficult to say that the Jewish people, after 2,000 years of exile, came back, established their own land, and eventually are going to fight one another. Never going to happen. I'm refusing to even hear this conversation happening. And I know for a fact, there's not even a chance it's going to happen. But even saying such a thing, even talking about it, and you hear the noises, and you hear people are, oh, it's going to happen, what's going to happen? This, what makes this time in Israel really difficult. You hear the noises, you hear the voices, and you say, my friends, you lost it. We are brothers. We're not going to be disattached. We're not going to be disconnected. And that's the second component that makes the time right now very stressful. And I'm talking about really stressful. You talk to people, they're going to tell you how they feel on the streets. I'm just checking the time. I don't have the time next to me. Yeah, we're good. So that's the story of demonstrations. And you must hear more about it and learn more about it. I just give you a very short brief of what happens there. I don't know where it's going to go and where it's going to develop. I must say that I really respect, people leaving their houses to demonstrate for their beliefs, but they need to keep it in a strict situation. They understand we are brothers and we're not going to fight one another. So that's what I'm going to say about this. If you heard the news, there was something positive a day ago. And this is, again, a positive that comes from negative. I'm going for the first subject we talked about the terror attack. So right now we have a right-wing government. And because of the terror attack that happened over and over and over and again, the government began to think of how we're going to act, what we're going to do, what is going to be almost a revenge to what they're doing. And I'm happy to say that they sided very smart and very wise. Since yesterday, Israel has approved 9 new communities in Judea and Samaria to be legal. I'm talking about, I have the list here, Abigail, which in our last trip in Judea, we went to visit. Joy went there with us, right? Abigail, Asael in the south mountain of Hebron, Shacharit in Samaria, Arnon, Arel and Aroe in Benjamin, Malachi Shalom, Mitzpeh Yehuda, Chogla next to Jericho, and Sde Boaz in Judea. 9 small communities that were established years ago and weren't legal. And now, to demonstrate our sovereignty on the land, to tell our neighbors that try to attack us, you want to attack us, you want to kill people, no worries. For every person that's going to die, we're going to establish a new community. For every soldier that is going to be in jeopardized, you're going to have 40, 50 families opening a new community. Let's see where it's going to take you then. It never happened before. And already you can hear on the news how America asks questions, Europe asks questions. How come you make those communities legal? It's against the law, etc., etc., etc. And I'm surprised to say that until now, I see that our government, our prime minister, the minister of defense, and all the people in charge say, no, we are standing behind this decision. Not only that, we are going to approve new housing in Judea and Samaria. 9,000 more apartments are going to be built and approved. And that's great news. We are trying to achieve 1 million people living in Judea and Samaria. We crossed 500,000, but there's more to go. We have land, we have place, we have willing to live here, and now we need the approval of the government. And the last thing is something personal that might explain why the atmosphere from the terror and the demonstration and the weather went all into one certain piece of things that happened personally to me. A week ago, last Monday, my grandmother passed away. My grandmother, Tzipora, she was 86, and I'd love to share just a couple of minutes about her life story, and I wish this is going to be in her blessed memory. So my grandmother, she was a Palestinian, and I mean a real Palestinian, because she was born in Israel in 1936 when the place was called Palestine by the Brits. And she was born into a family that lived in Tel Aviv. They owned a couple of stores and especially a small grocery shop that would serve people. And she would work in that grocery shop as a teenager. And when she was 17, and I'm talking about, passing all their childhood in the shadows of the Holocaust that happened in Europe, but they lived in Israel, so they were safe. When she was 17, a young guy came from Colombia. Is my grandfather. My grandfather was an Holocaust survivor. He survived Auschwitz and other camps. And one of the few places that were open to Jewish people after the war was South America. And he heard he had relatives in Colombia, Bogota, Colombia. So he moved there and he began to work in gems and the stones and some diamonds. And when he was already 28, they told him, listen, you need to find a wife, go to Israel. No Jewish ladies in Colombia. So he came to Israel and he met my grandmother. She was only 17, 18, but it was different in those times. And they got married. And my grandmother left Israel and moved to Colombia, where she had, my father was born in Colombia and his younger brother. And when they were maybe 14, there wasn't good Jewish education in Colombia, so they moved to Queens, New York. And unfortunately, when my father was 20, so 20 years after she got married with the first husband, she's only 40, he passed away. Left her with my father and his brother by herself in Queens, New York. And she, for the first time of her life, she had to go and work, and she had to educate their kids and develop them by herself. A couple of years later, my father and his brother made Aliyah to Israel. They moved to Israel, so she stayed there and she remarried. She remarried a person and they were married for 35 years or so. So she had a second family with grandsons and everything from her husband's side. They lived in New York. And 2 years ago, during COVID, we decided after her husband passed away 5 years ago that she cannot stay there by herself. She was in perfect shape. She was in very good health, but she was lonely by herself over there. So during COVID, my uncle and my father went and brought her into Israel. So where she was able to live this last years of her life here nearby in Ra'anana with her grandchildren, my kids, and she had a pleasant time with them. And I just want to say that my grandmother, the one thing that really, really made her who she was, that she was the most generous person that I knew. She would host any random person she saw. She would make him food and she would host them. And people knew, you come to New York, to West Hempstead, that's where she lives in Long Island, you have an hotel. That's the way they called her home. A house that, and she hosted everybody. She cooked everybody, even when she was 83, 84, 85. God blessed her with health. And unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, she went to the hospital with not feeling well, and she didn't leave the hospital. So during the Shiva, and when we spent together, the whole family, and we shared many stories about her, and I'm going to leave you with this last remark. She said that she lived in the last 2 years in Israel, and she always had her TV open. I don't know how, if you know this concept, but with her, the TV was always on. Like on the Sabbath, it would got closed, but during the week, all day, all night, you watch TV. And she said when she lived in the US, she saw a lot of news. It was always on the news, and she waited all the time to hear news about Israel. I think it's similar with you guys, right? You hear the news, but you're looking to hear news from Israel. So she said the CNN, Fox News were open all day. And the all day she waited for every couple of hours they had something about Israel. But here in Israel, when she opened the channel of news, she heard all the time news about Israel. And she said, in some point in her life, in the last 2 years, she wished she would have less news about Israel. Because living in the stress of seeing all the things that happen here all the time, it doesn't make you feel so good, right? Once in a while, you want to hear good updates, bad updates, that's life. But when you hear this constant going, it never stops. Every day is like the most crucial day of Israel. Every update is the most crucial update about Israel. So she mentioned, she said, I want to go back to the time that I would hear 3-4 times a day about Israel and live quietly with news about cats being stuck on the rooftops, about raccoons entering homes and making a mess. It happened to her, by the way, as well. And enough with the news from Israel. I'm ending this and getting you to ask questions now, because I want to say that everything I said today, from the terror and the demonstrations, the new communities, a lot of things going on. We don't know how it's going to develop each component, but we know one thing for sure. We are heading in good direction. Good is going to come. Better time is going to come. We're going to develop new areas. We're going to build more. We're going to establish more. And that's the strongest point. And yesterday, I was in Carnation One in our office, filming planting of trees. Tu B'Shvat was a week ago. So how come only this said yesterday? Because of the rain. It was raining, pouring rain last week. We couldn't plant anything. So a week later, I planted trees with the kids of Carnation One. And in the video that is going to be released in a couple of days after I'm going to edit it, you will see me saying this. When you plant trees with the next generation of kids in Judea and Samaria, you know you are in a good direction. It's going to take time. It's going to take a while, but we're going to get there. Thank you, my friends, for listening. And please, any questions, I'm here.
More than that, Shmuel, our Bible tells us you're going to get there. We can have total confidence, total confidence.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, you will get there. And us with you, hopefully, us with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please feel free to either unmute and yes, speak up or put your hand up, whatever suits best. Don't be shy.
Shmuel,
No
can I
questions? Yeah.
can I ask about I think it's Revava, the community where the 11 families came from Ukraine?
Revava.
Yeah. How are they going?
I don't know if you know, but we built houses there, but we only have 3 families living there, and that's the sad story, and that's not news already. And what happened was very sad. Immediately when we established the communities there, the neighborhoods, the need was big. The Ukrainians are coming; they need a place to live. But as time passed, we understood 2 things. One, many of them want to return to their land, to the Ukraine. They came here for a temporary time, not be willing to stay here for a long run. They come here, they take some money that the government takes them. They were here for 3-4 months in hotels or temporary housings. But then when really we wanted to come and open a community for you guys, everything is ready, many decided to go back. They said that life there continues and there's a way to live there with the situation, and it's not the end of the world. Now, that's complete shock for me. Why would you want to go into a war zone? Why do you want to go and risk your children, your family when there's war around? And I've learned, apparently, that there's things that cannot change. And for somebody to come to a new place is a real challenge. Let's put it this way. He prefers the war at his home than peace in a place that is not his home. Now, I thought that being Jewish and understanding this is the Jewish place, they will see this place as their home, but we weren't successful in that way. We have 3 families that living there now, and we have about 4 or 5 families that are thinking about it, but the vast majority of the families, they went back to the Ukraine, and some of them left to other places in Europe. So, Janine, unfortunately, it's not the best thing. I thought it's like, wow, an amazing cause, and we're gonna really help them. It's much more difficult than what we thought.
It's possible, though, it's not going to go well for them in Ukraine, isn't it? Like
Listen,
the news we hear on the war would suggest it's not going to get better. So they may even come back, Shmuel. They may even find their way back.
The neighbors are waiting for them. The houses are empty. They're waiting for immigrants. We said very clearly, Israel, housing problems. If we would say, yeah, you know what, just give Israelis the houses, it's going to be filled in 2 seconds.
Yes.
We are insisting to give another shot, another chance in leaving this place empty for families to come. Not only that, we are also flexible enough to say it doesn't need to be necessarily from the Ukraine. If there's new immigrants who are coming from South America, from the US, from Europe, from Australia, wherever they come from, let it be an immigrant neighborhood in Revava. So that's the only flexibility we have. No Israelis at this point. I don't want to wish them that life is not going to be peaceful in the Ukraine, but it might be that you're right, Joy, and things are going to be more clear and they will understand you cannot go back home. It could happen. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing the story about your grandmother too.
Thank you.
Shmuel, with government approval being given to these new communities, what benefits does that bring for them? I know Abigail was very isolated and basic, without amenities.
That's not even the problem. I'll share with you the biggest problem you have when you're illegal. So you've been to Abigail and you saw a lot of houses, living there. And some of the houses are permanent houses they've built. And that's the fact. When you're going to take a mortgage from the bank, right? The mortgage, now we're going to economy, you know that already, that it's based on the fact that the bank says, if you are not going to give back the loan I'm giving you, I'm going to take the house. If you live in a place which is illegal, you cannot take a mortgage and loan money from the bank to build it, because the place is not legal. So first and foremost, the most important thing, that they can build temporary houses without the question in mind, what's going to happen? If tomorrow, before tomorrow, because yesterday it happened, if 2 weeks ago, for some reason, a house would be, the government would decide they want to, demolish the community of Avigail. For some reason, all the money that was invested in it, nobody's going to return it. It was an illegal settlement, and nothing there was legal to the certain point that you couldn't even insure it. There wasn't insurance on the houses. That's a crazy situation to live in. So now when it's legal, two things happen. First of all, you can write the houses, it's legal, you can take a mortgage, you can take a loan. That's number one. Number two, all the legal benefits, not legal, civilian benefits, roads, a bus stop, internet, electricity, until now it was wired almost on a community based. It wasn't, permanently developed. Now the government needs to come and give them just like any other community. They're going to be listed. They're going to get all the rights, electricity, internet, phone, everything a community needs. Security issues, if you're concerned about that, Joy, don't be concerned. Every post in Israel where there's Jewish people living is going to be secured by the government, unless there's a special occasion that they decided not to. But generally, Avigail, you remember, you saw soldiers there. It was protected, it was secured. I would say that Avigail, it's so isolated, it's so crazy. They're literally, surrounded by Arabs' houses. I really wish them the best. I think it's one of the nicest places, and I really wish they're going to grow and bring more people so they're not going to be so isolated. Any other questions?
I'd like to ask about Ezekiel chapter 37. Is there anyone in Israel who feels that you are currently fulfilling the prophecy of Ezekiel chapter 37?
Practical questions.
I always, in every talk, Graham, I don't know where you are, but if you're going to talk I'm going to give in Australia, the most important thing I say all the time, we are living a prophecy. We are living a prophecy. We are living a prophecy. Our connection to the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria is literally a dream coming true. And more than that, it's a prophecy coming true. And when we live here and we see what happens around us, and we see that there's so many people that don't want to see us here, and yet we are able to strive to develop. You see, 9 more communities are going to be established in the area. We see how God is helping us, moving it. Just as you said, Joy, before, the promises of God are going to be fulfilled. So you asked our people in Israel. Of course, not all the people of Israel live this, but if you open your eyes, if you open your heart to the books and to see the prophecies coming true, and you're able to see them happening in front of your eyes. Look, I'm just going to share with you the screen. How do I do this? Here, that's the screen I see. See, that's the view. Oh no, here. That's the view, right? Did you notice?
Yes, where are you?
Yes.
I'm in Sufim. I'm in Sufim in my community.
Yes.
And I see the mountains of Samaria in front of me. And when I talk to you guys, I feel, okay, we're doing something here. We are living a prophecy. So absolutely.
I also know from Zafim, at the lookout, you can look down on the coastal plain and Ben Gurion Airport and know that if
Absolutely.
Hamas or Fatah was ever in occupation of this area, it would be all over for Israel, wouldn't it? All over.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Tsufim comes from the word letzapot, to observe. It's named like this because we are above all of the coast area. 70% of Israel is just under our feet. When you stand in this place, you understand, wow, if they're ever going to consider, giving it to our enemy, God forbid,
Yes.
not an option,
Yes.
not an option.
Yes. I also know it's prophecy being fulfilled that us from the nations, Shmuel, are going with you, hanging on to the zitzits of a Jew, because we know your God is with you. That's prophecy being fulfilled.
Always wearing my tzitzit, so please.
Yes, yes. We're happy to hang on.
I just want to finish before anything to give you just one last note that I forgot. How much the Supreme Court in Israel is different than all other places. How many cases are being dealt in the Supreme Court of Australia in a year? Somebody knows?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll look it up.
From what I read, from what I read, the average is between 50 to 100 a year. Major cases that really need the Supreme Court to deal with. Do you know how many cases the Supreme Court in Israel deal with in a year? An average of 10,000 cases. That means that every small and minor detail that doesn't fit somebody's role comes to the Supreme Court. So that's another thing we need to do the reform, to change, to make things more normal. At least, I'm sorry I had to finish with that, because that's what we're dealing with. Please read about it, hear some podcasts about it. It's crazy. It is crazy.
Shmuel,
All right.
one thing. Can you do?
Yes.
I'm from Australia. Australia has always had a thing where our government alone appoints judges to the Supreme Court.
Right.
They don't vote on it. And people in Israel say this is a lacking of democracy. It is ridiculous. There's no democracy in the judges. The democracy only comes through the fact that the democratic process decides who's going to be judges. And there's absolutely no right, provided it's within the Constitution, the government can make any laws they like. And there's nothing that our High Court, we call it, can do anything about it. And I can't understand what's going on with this cry for democracy in Israel, which is not democracy, it's the opposite of democracy.
Yes.
As I said, I really feel that right now this is a call for action for all the left side that really see that they lost the election, and in the coming future, they're not going to be voted again unless it's going to be a crook that's going to steal the right-wing votes and make a left government. And they're crying. They're demonstrating because they see they're not going to gain power in the election day, so they want to gain the power from the offices, from the court. And why do you need to win an election if you have all the Supreme Court in your side and they're going to rule and decide on anything that happens in Israel? You don't need to win an election anymore. You have the power with the Supreme Court. And just another note, of course, Israel does not have a constitution. That's one of the problems that makes this problem. And when officially Israel was established in 48 and they were conversation about a constitution or not, there were some wise people that say Israel has only one constitution, and that's the Torah, that's the Bible.
Yes.
Exactly.
Human beings are
Exactly.
not going to give a constitution to the government, to the state of Israel. Yeah.
And I was going to say, Hashem can only bless if we all individually and corporately keep doing the right thing. What is right, what is just.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So friends, wherever you are, I hope that next week or in 2 weeks, I'm going to see you. Can't believe I'm coming. Leave some kangaroos that I can catch when I come. No, I'm
There'll be
joking.
stuffed
I am not going to catch any kangaroos. God forbid. I want to see
Yes.
them. Only see them. I'm
Well,
not
we've
going to
got
pet them.
them in
Also,
our
I'm scared.
backyard.
I'll come and see. So I hope I'm going to see you all wherever you are, and continue, please, to
Yes.
bless Israel and pray for us, and pray also that more people are going to come, more than in this Zoom, and I'm going to meet some people, and I'm going to share our story. Complete different story, by the way. The story of Judea and Samaria, my personal story. Now you know my grandmother's story, but maybe my story, some of the service in the army, and what brought me to the situation I need to travel all the way to the beginning of the world, Tasmania, and talk about Israel.
Yes.
And
Okay.
Shmuel, you will meet some other unique animals as well.
Yes.
Not just kangaroos.
No snakes. No snakes, though. No snakes.
Is
Yeah.
Canberra,
Australians.
We got plenty of them too.
is Canberra, is
Shmuel, I was
Canberra on
going
your
to
itinerary?
say, as
Canberra,
soon as
no.
you get off,
Canberra not? Oh dear.
No, sorry,
That's where I
Graham.
am.
Next year. Next year.
Next year.
Paul, can I
Shmuel,
ask
the
a
Lord-
very practical
Shalom.
question? Hang on.
Shmuel,
Sorry?
hello. Shmuel,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
going to say, the Lord may bless you, because on some days, as you get off the aeroplane at Tullamarine
Oh,
Airport in
yes.
Melbourne, the
Yes.
paddocks surrounding the airport itself is
Yes.
full of
Full.
kangaroos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you may see them as soon as you get to Melbourne. They come right down from the country and sit and graze for a day, and then they all migrate back up. You may get them on the right day.
I'll pray for that.
We can buy you a stuffed one to go home with.
Oh, I bet you I will bring some stuffed animal.
Okay.
Thank you for
Alright.
that update. It was really good and really
Thank
helpful.
you.
Really
Yes.
appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye. Later.
Paul,
Later.
don't go away.
Shmuel,
Don't go away.
I'm here. I'm here.
Shalom to Sandra.
Yes, sure.
Yes, Lawrence. What are you saying?
I'm trying to find out when Shmuel is going to be arriving and where he's going to be arriving so that I can arrange to pick him up.
Yes.
So far, I haven't been able to find out anything. I have
No,
found
you
out the coffee is important.
Oh, the
Yes.
very important.
Yes.
The most important thing. I will update you right now, okay? I had some changes that needs to be done. I'll email you the info.
Terrific. Thank you.
Shmuel, you do need to allow a good 2.5 hours in Sydney. Trish Cortizo just said she's a travel agent,
Mhm.
but if you can, allow yourself as much time as possible to get on that flight to Melbourne, and then on to Devonport. See how you go. Anyway, yeah. Okie doke.
If you need any
Lola Tov.
See you in Brisbane tomorrow.
Thank
That's
you.
you, Zach.
Thank you.
You'll be
Thank
staying
you,
with
Zach.
you,
Hello.
Zach, too.
Oh,
Bendigo.
cool.
Yeah.
Bendigo.
Yeah.
Mm.
Please come to Canberra. You gotta come to Canberra.
Next
You're
time.
Australian.
Yes.
Next.
Yes.
The Australian
Okay.
capital territory.
Capital city. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
We've got kangaroos all over the place around Bendigo.
Most important thing.
Yes.
Most important thing.
Okay.
Okay. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye
Too
bye.
much. Good night, everybody.
I hope you enjoyed that film. And we have lots more film content and emails and articles that I'm sure you will enjoy as well. Check out our website at cfoic.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can do that right from the homepage. I know you will really enjoy the content that will land in your inbox on a regular basis. Hope to see you soon.